Hi, welcome to Tech Beyond Gender podcast. I'm your host, Meena Satishkumar. Today, I'm joined by Wendy Stevenson-Vrame, an accomplished engineering manager with a career that spans more than 2 decades across New Zealand, New York, and San Francisco. Wendy began her journey in recruitment back in the late 90s, and over the years, she's built a wealth of experience in talent acquisition, leadership, and mentoring. Now at TradeMe, she leads a team of cloud and database reliability engineers where she champions continuous improvement and creates inclusive environments that empower women in tech to thrive. Wendy's story is one of adaptability, growth, and deep commitment to people. Thanks for joining us, Wendy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel very privileged.
Thanks for joining us, Wendy. Now, I would like to start from where are you from? How was your childhood like? What is that which really attracted you to recruitment in the initial years?
Sure. I actually grew up in Wellington, New Zealand, and I I loved fashion right from the very start. I used to make paper dolls with all their outfits, and then graduated with a sewing machine into making fabric clothes for all my Barbies. And then I made matching outfits for myself with my Barbie, and that's where my passion for fashion started. My grandmother was a sewer. So it kind of, I guess, came through the genes in that way. I left high school and went into fashion design, which was amazing. But I do remember them saying right in the first week, if you got into fashion for money, now's the time to leave. Because it was a real, you had to love it to survive in it. And I graduated and decided I wanted to go to London to do my OE, and went on a, saved up for 6 months, and then went through the US as part of my trip to London, and ended up in a nanny job in Connecticut, which is just outside of New York. And a couple of different nanny jobs later, I had won the green card lottery, which is very hard to do. I think 72 people won it from the Australasia the year that I won. And that opened a lot of doors for me on the corporate side. And the last family that I worked for, he worked for Lehman Brothers, which was an investment bank down in Wall Street, and said, hey, you would actually be good at recruiting. And I went, what? What is that? I don't even know anything about that. And so ended up interviewing. I had to borrow an outfit because I was just in nanny gear. So I had to borrow an outfit to go into the interview. And yeah, I think they liked that I was kind of a go-getter at the time. I didn't know anything about campus recruiting and ended up working in the campus recruiting team. So yeah, kind of strange, I guess. um, but it turns out my mother was actually in recruiting or personnel for the airlines at the time or growing up, and I didn't put two and two together. So it turns out we kind of had very similar backgrounds, which I didn't really think of at the time. And then mum and I got talking when I got the Wall Street job, and she was like, well, that's what I did. I'm not surprised you're doing that. So I guess some of it's ingrained without knowing.
Wow, so you started off pursuing something which your grandma was doing and then landed up doing something your mom was doing.
No, it's kind of a little bit odd, I guess, but maybe it's all ingrained without even thinking about. But I still did a bit of fashion on the side in New York, but I just couldn't actually afford to live in New York and do fashion. That's when I made that decision to go into corporate, because I knew, the money was, I could actually live and stay in New York on those salaries. So yeah, I spent a couple of years at Lehman in New York. And then at the time they had the dot-com boom and they needed someone to run their West Coast office. So I put my hand up and said, oh, well, that's closer to home for me. Working in San Francisco, it's just one flight instead of 3 or 2. And so I jumped at the opportunity and ran all their West Coast recruiting for them. So, yeah, I think one thing that I've learned through my career is put your hand up for these opportunities that come out, even if it's a little bit scary. I didn't know anything about San Francisco or tech companies at the time, but just having that kind of passion for learning and kind of going for it.
So was it on like in tech recruitment in San Francisco?
Yeah, so in San Francisco for Lehman, it was all the tech companies that were going public and doing their IPOs and stuff. So I was hiring investment banking analysts and associates who would cover some of those companies. So, I guess I started off in tech without even knowing that I was kind of absorbing tech.
So how was the tech industry in early 90s in San Francisco?
Was kind of wild. Like San Francisco was incredible. It was like so hectic and busy. It was kind of the start of Yahoo and Google. All the like Super Bowl ads for all these startups. The kids were coming out of like Stanford and Berkeley and going into these insanely high paying jobs for these little startups. So it was like the wild wild west trying to recruit. You'd give out an offer and all of a sudden that candidate would have 5 offers for startups and they go, traditional investment banking versus startups, I think I'm going to go that way, which I don't blame them. I think it was kind of an exciting opportunity when it was all sort of just starting to pop. So it was kind of a really cool time to be in San Francisco.
Now, when you look at the recruitment market at that time in late 90s in San Francisco, and how has it changed over the years and how is it looking like now?
Well, I think it goes in cycles, as you can probably see. At the time, it was a candidate market. Pretty much every student would have 5 or 6 or 7 competing offers, whether it was investment banking, fintech, the healthcare was picking up, all the tech companies were booming. And we've seen it ride with the economy as well. Like right now, it's an employer market. There's more candidates than there are jobs. So, it kind of reverses. Same with the property market. When there's more houses, then there are buyers versus more people, less houses. So it goes in cycles.
So how did the gender equity look like in recruitment and technology?
Back then, well, I would be in very similar to today. Same with investment banking. There were not many females that went into investment banking or the tech industry back then. I think it's pretty similar today. We really are trying to get the message out that we would love more females in tech. And that's why I do like to go to student events and go on campus and go to high schools and talk to students and explain the opportunities and kind of bust those myths that they think that if you've got a career in tech, you're just sitting like in a basement on a laptop. That's not it at all. And I think educating people on the opportunities that there are. If you like math, there's awesome roles in data and data science. And if you like writing, there's great other opportunities within a tech corporation. There's legal roles, there's obviously software developers and, our cloud and engineering roles. So there's so many things. I guess my thing is I'd love people to really understand like how core skills can really benefit um, those technical roles. So educating people on that as well. I
Cool.
think that's the difference is probably more education and it's more being able to see and learn more about different companies and their cultures now. Whereas, back in the 90s, Google was just coming out. So you couldn't find things. It wasn't as accessible as it is now.
Nice. So, what's a formative early career story that shaped your philosophy on hiring or people leadership?
I mean, I'm very lucky that I've done a lot of like thousands of interviews, interviewed students all the way up to C-level. So I've got I really trust my gut based on questions that I can kind of get an understanding of how people tick, how their brains work, how what their motivation and passion is. I focus more on the people fit. Uh, Obviously, core technical skills are valuable, but they can be taught. You can't, empathy and those core passion for learning, that growth mindset sometimes can't be taught. So it's sort of having those raw core skills, collaboration, working in a team. These are all things that I'm looking for when I meet with people, no matter what level they are. Yeah, I do kind of look at the culture of where I am, because New York and San Francisco are very, very different cities, different cultural styles versus even Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch. Those are the three markets that I hire for, and they are all very different. And just like our offices have different personalities and style, the main thing carries through, our values carry throughout the offices, but they are slightly different styles. And a regional office versus hiring for a headquarters. Like, for example, when I was hiring for New York, we would hire for a pool of candidates, and then they would then go into different teams depending on their interests in a match. Whereas San Francisco, I would hire directly for a team because the teams were smaller. It was a regional vibe, and you had to make sure that they clicked with the team a lot more because you didn't have the luxury of movement so much. So it is kind of a different style to hiring for a bigger office than it is for a smaller team. And same with team sizes. Like if you're hiring a team of if you're hiring someone for a team of 20 versus a team of 3, um, you've got to really take into that cultural aspect.
Is talent acquisition different to engineering management?
I think it helps. I think they go hand in hand. I think my talent experience and having difficult conversations with candidates, helping them through the process, being able to understand and read people has really helped with my leadership because, whether it's a candidate that I'm helping to figure out where they want to go, where they want to go short term versus long term, and if the roles that I have will match up and help them get there. It's the same with someone in my team, trying to make sure that how I can encourage them to get where they need to be or where they want to go, and giving them those opportunities, whether it's within my team or I see an opportunity in someone else's team that will help them get there. Again, it could be having difficult conversations or having encouraging conversations to figure out what's the best fit.
Hmm. So, which recruiting instincts serve you best as an engineering leader?
Um, I think communication, having transparent conversations with candidates and also internally helps. Having empathy definitely helps. Being able to understand the person's current situation, because you need to know when you can push or retreat a little bit and help them um, figure out timing, because timing's everything with any role, and internally as well. People have, we all have a lot going on in our personal lives, whether it's, family situations or you're caring for um, aging parents. There's different pressures these days than there were even 20 years ago. And being able to understand the wider picture and building trust with your teams and individuals so that you can figure out, do they need a little push, or let's take our foot off the gas in the next 3 months, 6 months while you get the other stuff sorted, as long as you know, still keep going in your day job, but let's figure out how to get you there. Maybe it will be quicker. Maybe it will take a bit longer, but we want to manage it so that people are progressing, but also at a pace that works for them and for the team. So I
Hmm.
think understanding people and understanding um, career aspirations, it has really benefited me in this role.
Nice. So, as you mentioned at the start, like there's always been this gender inequity, right, in the technical roles. Now, when it comes to recruitment or when it comes to workplace management, have you adopted different strategies when it comes to male versus female professionals?
Personally, I look at everyone the same, but being a female myself in this industry probably gives me a little more understanding of what maybe other females or parents are going through. I have two, a tween and a teenager, two boys who, like need help and support at home and getting to events and getting to sporting activities. So I try to take in that view with everyone in my team, whether they have kids or not, whether they have outside pressures or not. It is hard because I think I would love to see more females in tech. I think, I've gone to so many events where you look around and you're like one of 10 females in a sea of 150. We all kind of look at each other and, oh yeah, I saw you at the AI Guild, like it's the same sort of group that are going to these different meetups and stuff. And there's nothing wrong with being the only person because I've been in male industries my entire career, coming from investment banking and finance and now tech. I'm quite comfortable in my own skin with groups of all diversity backgrounds, but I think it can be quite daunting if you're new to the industry. One thing that I have started doing at Trade Me is when we look at events and see that it might be a cool event that we should have all representation at, I will go to my female networks and go, hey, do you guys want to go to this? Do you want to go together? I'll get you 10 tickets. And so they've started kind of, I want to say traveling in packs, but it's more of that supportive atmosphere. If I go to a speaking event, I ask if people will come and, cheer me on, and vice versa. If any of my team are speaking at an event that, I've helped them get to, I take a group of people to, so they've got a friendly, supportive person in the audience that they can look at and, and you nod and you got this, and that kind of takes away some of the nerves. So I think we really do need to support each other and, I've got plenty of guys that come and cheer me on too, as well as my female counterparts. So that's been really cool seeing everyone kind of supporting each other through these things. And that's probably something new that I've sort of started doing in the last 6 months, because it sort of had really good feedback from some of my more junior engineers who are like, oh, it was really great to see you guys coming and cheering us on. I'm like, cool, well, anytime, even if it's 5 o'clock, I'll be there. So, my kids are now at an age where they can kind of be a bit more solo. So I can kind of get there and support my fellow females at these events, because we do need to be showing up to these things. When you show up, you're networking, you're building your networks, and that's how you keep going in these roles.
Completely agree. And it's really nice to see the initiatives that you're undertaking to encourage women to attend these events, networking events. And I think it was the first research that we published through Tech Beyond Gender, where we captured perspectives of women in New Zealand tech sector. And like I combined that findings with the other research that was done overseas. And one finding that came out quite obvious was how women were when, especially in the interviews, they felt that it was not a fair playing ground because the entire sector was predominantly built for men. And then the whole recruitment side of things also had them in the mind. And obviously, with behavior, right? Women act differently to men. We are just different. So when it comes to acknowledging that they would know a skill set, women would normally not confidently say that they know it unless they know every single detail.
Unless they were experts, right?
Yeah.
It's
Where-
so true.
Whereas with men, they might just know a little bit, maybe 30% or 40%, and they would be like, yeah, I can build on that. And they confidently say, yes, I know it. Right. So there are like these subtle clues that you sort of miss out on when having the recruitment process or the interviewing process exactly the same. Whereas most organizations haven't really made an effort to actually see how can we change the whole recruitment side of things. Like we actually word the job ads differently, the job descriptions differently. And what if they, in the interview, if they say something like, I don't know, do you actually take it at face value? You would, right? Because they've said they don't know. But
Yeah.
like, how do you judge in those scenarios, right? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know from being in the recruiting world that if you have a job
Mm.
posted, and as you said, a female candidate will look at it and go, "Oh, I took 7 out of the 10. So, oh no, no, I'm not gonna go for it, right?" And a male counterpart will most likely look at it and go, "I took 3 out of the 10. I'm gonna go for it." And that's, I mean, I don't know why that happens. Maybe it's a confidence thing, or I do place on any ads that I put out is, even if you don't tick the boxes, all the boxes, please apply. If something out of this job has piqued your interest, you know, apply, or talk to me, because I think when I'm looking for candidates, I'm looking for that growth mindset. And I'm a prime example, right? I would not tick all the boxes of any of these roles that I've ever applied to. But it's, having the gumption to go, actually, yeah, I'm not going to tick all the boxes, but of the boxes that I do tick, I tick them really well. And I can add value. I like this company. It aligns with the values that I have, and I want to get my foot in the door. So, I absolutely encourage anyone listening to this, if there's something that you get excited about when you see a job, absolutely apply. And don't hesitate to reach out and go to the person, if they posted it on LinkedIn. Hey, I saw your role. I know I don't tick all the boxes, but wow, this really got me excited because of XYZ. Like, I want people to think outside the box. I think outside the box all the time, you know. And I mean, when I post a job, and yeah, it's got 10 different things. That's the unicorn. They usually don't exist. I'm looking for people who are really passionate about what they do, what they're interested in. I'm not expecting anyone to hit the ground running, even like a seasoned senior. They're still going to take 6 months plus to get their feet around how an organization even runs, how the platforms are built. Every single company is different. So I'm not expecting anyone to hit the ground on day one and be an expert. There's always that ramp up time, that, developing in the role time. I would love to see more females just apply. I think it's a lost opportunity if you don't.
So, what will be your playbook for reducing false negatives and false positives in
Yeah.
technical?
In technical interviews, I'm going to be honest, because I'm not hands-on on the tools, I pair up. So I always pair up with a technical person. During our first interview, they will ask a couple of basic technical questions just to kind of get an understanding of what level they are. I'm there in a way to find out if they can explain to me what that is, what they do. Because if you can explain to me, then I know that you'll be able to explain it to anyone in the business. So I look for adaptability. So if they're explaining technical things, they might explain it very high level technical to my counterpart. And then they might go, so, you know, they might put it into an everyday scenario. So for me, that's a great way. That means that I know that they can speak technical to my technical people, and then they can speak non-technical to the business side of things. So no matter what level they are, even as a junior, you don't have to drill down on like a super technical level. It's just an understanding of basic concepts.
Nice.
Hopefully that answered your question.
It does, yeah. Because I do feel in a lot of the job ads these days, like I think it's because of the market as well. There are too many people out there looking for jobs in technology sector. So you do see jobs with very niche sort of skill sets that they would ask, technical skill sets. And from my perspective, I'm like, technology is going to constantly change anyway, right? You just need the people, the soft skills that you need to be looking at.
Yeah. To me, I mean, as you know, it's changing every 5 minutes these days. And one of my key questions I ask in an interview is, how do you keep up with technology? How do you like to learn? What's the latest thing you've learned? And, someone might say, I love podcasts and da-da-da. And I say, cool. Well, tell me what's the latest podcast that you've listened to? So I'm looking for that drill down to see if actually they're talking the talk, because it's very easy to be vague in interviews, but like I love to hear people's opinions. Whether they differ to mine is it's irrelevant. I just want to see what people's thoughts processes are. Like if they're a Simon Sinek fan, well, tell me what's your favorite thing about Simon Sinek? I probably mispronounced his name, but like that's really cool. Love to hear that. Tell me more about that. And that's with anything, I guess with the interviews for me, personally, I like in-person ones the best because I can gauge from their demeanor. Another question I like to ask is, what do you love doing on a daily basis? I want to see their face light up when they talk about all the cool things that they do. Like, what is your favorite thing in your current job? What's, like, tell me about that. Like, to me, that's how I kind of get to know people a bit more. And in a reverse question, what do you hate doing? What's your least favorite thing that you... And usually I get timesheeting. That's a pretty standard answer to that one. I think everyone hates timesheeting, but yeah, like I love interviews actually, because I get to know people a bit more. I usually learn something from the person, and I kind of have a Rolodex in my mind as I meet people. I kind of file them away. So even if it's not for this role, there might be something down the line, or my connections at other companies are looking for something and I go, actually I met someone awesome that wasn't quite right for our role, but they might be good for that role. So that's why it's important to put yourself forward and meet people and network, because you never know how those roles will help your future.
Absolutely. So you've done like thousands of interviews, and now is there any one common interview practice that if you could change it, what would it be and why?
I'm always surprised at some people when they come into an interview. It seems like they don't want to be there. It sounds funny. And I think maybe people do get nervous around interviews. So, my first port of call is to make sure that people are feeling comfortable. Like for me, an interview should be a conversation. 50-50 back and forth. You learn about the company and, the hiring manager and vice versa. But I think, like one of my first questions, I'll be like, oh, so what interested you about this role? Like why trade me? Why BNZ? Why Ernst & Young, whatever company I was working for at the time. And the amount of times I sort of get kind of mumbles in response, or I don't know, it's just, looking and it's like, oh, not a great way to start the interview. So I guess, having some background would be doing a bit of research on the company, like that to me would be a fundamental change that I could offer as advice, is just kind of being enthusiastic and excited about who you're actually interviewing with. Whether it may not be quite the right role, that's okay. We can work on that. But I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Like, I was thinking more around the context of, is there something that you would change? But I think you did answer by saying that, yes, you would prefer the candidates to be more prepared, right?
Uh, I
Doing
think
some,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have changed the way we've interviewed in tech. Um, when I was at BNZ and now at Trade Me, like we really do uh more behavioral first,
Hmm.
because I think the core skills I'm finding not necessarily are more important, but are equally important. We can teach the technical, but they really have to have those core foundations, the growth mindset, the passion for learning or tech in general, that team collaboration, those core skills. So we've flipped it. Like when I first got into tech, it was focus on the technical first, see if they can do the technical job. And that kind of took up a lot of time for the interviewers. So we kind of flipped it and checked to make sure that they had the same or cultural and values, that they aligned with the company more. And I think that's worked out a lot better, because I think if you're good technically, you can always grow your technical skills, but you have to have those kind of solid core foundations. Empathy is one that's coming through a bit more. Having empathy for your teammates, having empathy and an understanding of how things are working. That seems to be a little bit more of a push these days, which is great.
Awesome. Now, for women and underrepresented folks, where do you see the biggest invisible tax at work? And how do managers remove them?
I think it's hard when we're doing these networking events and opportunities for people to meet others in the industry when they're in evening events. I think that's the biggest tax on parents or females, because quite often a lot of us have, responsibilities as well. I'm really fortunate that my husband and I um, trade off, so I can do a lot of networking and travel for my role. But I don't imagine a lot of households have that opportunity sometimes to trade off, or they might live further away from an office or a CBD. So to leave, go do childcare stuff, and then come back is obviously a mission. So, I am encouraging any anything that we do at Trade Me to be within those work hours, or even just before 3 p.m. And that we get a better turnout when we do stuff at like 1 or 2 p.m. versus 4 p.m. We get a better representation of diverse attendees when we do things during those before school or during school hours. I would encourage companies to kind of think of that. Although it's always hard to do stuff during their work hours, because then you get meeting conflicts and stuff, but that seems to be working a lot better.
So, what advice do you give women who are ready for people leadership but are pigeonholed as reliable individual contributors?
I mean, there's so much really great information out there. So we start off, like if you're into this, look at if there's not opportunities within the office, think about opportunities within your communities, whether you can take up leadership roles in sports teams or leadership roles in your community events, and whether it's within your churches or within your community networks. Start getting that experience, even from an early age. It doesn't, age is not the necessary blocker. It's by I think for people, it's really understanding people and being able to read a situation, know when to be transparent, when to hold back some information because you don't want to panic people. I'm really lucky because I think because of my recruiting experience, I had a lot of experience with difficult conversations and facing into things ahead of, like, being proactive rather than reactive. And that's really helped me. Having a bit of background in HR and those HR processes really helped me get ahead of those things because, uh, again, you want to be proactive rather than reactive in those situations. So I think any kind of experience you can get, even students, I say, get those leadership roles, get anything, whether it's like team captain for the chess team or the netball team or debate. Any of those kind of roles will help you understand people, help you understand how to influence, how to get people on your side, how to listen. Like, what are the main problems that you're dealing with? And then figuring out how to backpedal and come up with solutions. Um, any of those kind of experiences will help. Um, yeah, yeah.
What's your stance on degrees versus skills, and how do you fairly evaluate career switches or non traditional backgrounds?
Well, I am a perfect example of that with my fashion degree, and now I'm in tech. So I am very open minded to, I'd say, life skills and what you can bring between your core skills and your life skills to any role. To be honest, I think there's a lot of things that we can bring from other careers, experiences into these roles in tech. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't I mean, it's nice to have the core skills, especially for the more junior people, because it kind of shows that foundational understanding of tech. When I was hiring at another company, a lot of the network engineers had been plumbers or electricians in former lives because of the understanding of the flow of whether it was the flow of water or the flow of electricity. Kind of is similar to the flow of tech, how it moves through. So life experience can be super valuable to these roles. So I don't necessarily take into account that unless it's someone who is kind of fresh out of school. But even still, having a law degree can help in these roles. Having an English degree can certainly help. It goes back to that passion for learning. Um,
So, this is where I get a little bit weary about, like, especially with AI now, right? A lot of the organizations and recruitment agencies too, they use AI to help screen some specific certain criterias. How does it work? Especially, I think it would work really against career switchers, people who are like returning back to work after a few years of break. It becomes more challenging, I guess, right? What is your stance on it?
yeah, I don't know what the recruiters this very minute are using for their screening tools. I haven't delved into that aspect yet. I think it's still fairly new. I do encourage people to try out the new tech, try out Gemini, Chat GPT for help with their interview prep, and how to write their resumes or CVs or cover letters. So I'm kind of flipping it onto the candidate side, but I think it would be detrimental to candidates to screen that way, because you're going to miss some truly awesome candidates who may not fit the box. As I said, I'm a career switcher. If you looked at my resume, it'd probably be like, huh, what? They were in real estate, but the real estate gave me negotiation, helped me build empathy, helped me match people to houses, helped figure out how far to push people. So all those skills come into this role, helps me read people, and the creative side helped me think outside the box. Like, how do we market this property? Who are we marketing it to? Like, same with candidates. How do we help this candidate get their foot in the door? How do we market them? So there are things that you can miss if you just use the tools to do a sweep and go, okay, I'm only looking for someone with engineering manager in their title for an engineering manager role. There will be hundreds of candidates that will miss out if we do that, because every organization, there's some consistency across this, but what if you're called an engineering lead yet doing the same function? Like, every organization calls it something slightly different, or I don't think it's a good idea. It can help,
Yeah.
but not to rely on it solely.
And that also takes me back to how difficult it can be for many migrants who are looking for jobs in here, right? With this
Yes.
barrier saying that they don't have local experience. How do they mitigate it, especially when it comes to recruitment? How can they get around it to convincing
Mm,
someone to take them or consider them for an interview?
yeah. I mean, I can say from my personal experience, after working in the US for 20 years and then coming back here, being born and bred in Wellington, I struggled to get a job in Wellington. And I had excellent international experience working with really big organizations and small organizations. But because I didn't have like a government agency or someone couldn't vouch for me in the Wellington market, I had a really hard time. Even my husband, the same. We both struggled to get our foot in the door back here. So if I struggled, I can't imagine what people are going through who are new to New Zealand. So I do have a lot of empathy in that aspect and understand the bigger international companies and what value people can bring with them. I would offer a suggestion of just getting their foot in the door, even if it's a stepping stone role, to understand the market, understand the culture of New Zealand. New Zealand culture is very different. Like, we may all speak English, but it's very different to working in the US as it is to working in New Zealand. And that's something that I'm still getting my head around, because I hadn't worked over here as an adult. So, yeah, I think, just try to assimilate into the culture as quickly as you can, whether it's joining those community groups, networking as much as you can. I'm always going to give someone an opportunity if they show those core skills, empathy for others, paying it forward, helping out other people in the community. These are all kind of big values for me, because it means that they will bring a lot to the team. They will look out for the team. They will look out and help each other grow. And it's not a knowledge hoarding, it's a knowledge sharing. It's like, how do they show those skills off in the community? Like, whether it's at a local church, what are they doing for their local communities? That sort of thing. I look at all of that when I'm hiring.
So now, to finish off, we'll have some rapid fire questions to.
Oh boy. Okay.
What are the most overrated interview signals?
I would say there's a fine line between being cocky and being confident. So to me, having confidence in your ability and being able to say what you're really good at and what you love and what you're not good at. But, is it important to the role? If it's not important to the role, then that's okay.
Hmm.
I guess another recent one was I was in an interview with 3 people at another company, and they was asking the candidate questions and they were answering to someone else, which, yeah, they looked for the most important person in the room and responded to them. So that to me was a bit of a red flag.
So, most underrated interview signal.
Underrated. I just being friendly, like having a bit of a laugh, just like the candidate is there to learn as much as they can about the company and about the people that they're going to be working with, about your hiring manager. Like my expectations are people are going to ask me what my style of leadership is, because if they don't like my style, they probably won't enjoy working with me, and I want them to love what they do and have an enjoyable experience. So definitely ask questions of the team that you're interviewing with. I think with experience, I trust my gut a lot more now and don't ignore the signals that I get as a hiring manager, as a leader, putting my recruiting hat on, a deep dive on questions. If something doesn't sound right, I might ask a follow-up question, whereas before I might have just, kind of taken that as the answer. Um, yeah. I think putting people at ease at the start of an interview has really got the best results for me. I'm not out here to try to sink someone. I really just want to get to know them more and figure out if they're going to be a good fit, and vice versa.
Nice. A leadership habit you won't compromise on.
My values. I will only work for companies that align with my personal values and beliefs. That's super important to me. I, I've left companies because it doesn't feel right. I want to be somewhere where people are treated with respect and kindness and knowledge sharing, not hoarding. I have a pay it forward mentality, whether it's when I meet people, I want to help them. Can't help that. That's sort of ingrained because people have been very kind to me in my career, and I wouldn't have gotten where I am today without people helping me. Whether I asked for it or not, they've helped smooth the pathways, and I want to pay that forward to other people. So I guess that's what I look for in a team that really helps and supports each other, and brings all of them up. And that's where I think we've had a lot of success with our teams, is that kind of vibe.
Nice. A final one for you. Is there a book, post, or a talk you would recommend to new managers?
I mean, I actually I watch masterclass.com. It's one of my absolute favorite series, and there's so many different leadership styles, different backgrounds, different, like whether it's leading sports teams, leading corporate teams, just understanding how different people lead and taking tidbits out of everything. Yeah, I think that's my favorite, to be honest. We watch it as a group. We have an enterprise subscription and we love it. Yeah, it's just kind of opens your mind to different ways of thinking, and because the presenters on there have different diverse backgrounds. There's females, there's males, there's different age groups. It really takes into account the diversity that you're working with as well, and to have empathy and really understand the wider picture and how to bring people on that journey so that everyone comes out feeling really positive. I mean, change is inevitable, but it's how we adapt to the change and how we continuously grow, and pay it forward to others so that they can grow. And it's sort of like it becomes a really good cycle of giving back. So I do love masterclass. It's one of my favorites.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you. I know you're such a busy woman, and making time for this, it's a privilege for us. Thank
Oh,
you.
it's absolutely my privilege, and thank you so much, Meena. It's great to come full circle, after working at BNZ a while back and running into each other at different things. So I feel really special that I've had this opportunity to catch up with you.
Thank you so much.